Welcome back to APolitical. I am your co-host, Alan Sroki.
I'm your other co-host, Tyler Goldberg. Alan, what are the odds that we are wearing identical outfits to what we were wearing last time we filmed?
It's quite the coincidence, I gotta say. And look, nobody would ever accuse either of us of having a really diverse wardrobe.
No.
It's really the same 3 shirts around the office.
We'll have to talk to production about increasing our budget for costumes.
But look, we don't, there's a reason, perhaps, why we might be wearing the same things
Sure.
here. We don't really have time in the mornings to pick out our outfits. We're just go these days.
Absolutely.
A couple weeks back, you and I kind of in passing mentioned in one of our episodes here that everything post Labor Day in our line of work is really where things accelerate.
Yeah.
We felt that it'd probably be important to actually explain a little bit more why that is.
Sure.
And there are a couple of reasons. We could go anywhere you want to with this if you want to lead us off here.
I mean, I think one of the things I want to start with, and first, we could be seeing $7-8 billion in post-Labor Day political spend, just to put that out there. But where I want to start is the concept of being in window and advertisers, candidates in particular, qualifying for what's called lowest unit rate. Terms you'll hear, us say all the time, but the folks at home may not be as familiar with. So the 10-second explanation for that is that within 60 days of a general election, 45 days of a primary election, candidates, not independent expenditure groups, which we talked about in our second episode, candidates are entitled to lowest unit rate when it comes to linear media. Now, I also want to make that distinction because if you tuned into last week's episode, you saw me get all passionate about why digital was lagging behind in the reporting and disclosure world. The rules we're talking about, like everything we talked about last week, only apply to linear. There's an entirely different confusing way this is applied on the digital side.
Not to cut you off there. There's a lot of meat left on that bone from the editing chopping block from last week's episode.
Yeah, we could recycle it into another episode where we wear the same clothes.
Suffice to say,
Yeah.
there's a lot to leave on the digital side. But for the linear side, just to recap, now that we are under 50 days to the election, you said the window starts 60 days from the election day, all federal candidates can take advantage of these lowest unit rates.
Sure.
And that applies to every market across the country.
Absolutely. So you're going to see them put a lot more of that money into advertising, which is funny because they are getting lower rates than maybe they did a few weeks back. But those rates are going to increase because it's supply and demand.
Everyone's going to spend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're seeing, that's how these, sort of like a snowstorm where the snow accumulates by magnitude, that's how you're going to start seeing this increased level of spending.
Right.
And, a graph is going to end up going straight up by the last few weeks.
Interesting. Well, to take over from that, there's another phenomenon that you and I have really been paying attention to, really since the beginning of this cycle. We read about how this might be a factor this time around. We have seen a really large increase in campaign hybrid political advertising, which is essentially the actual campaign, the federal candidate running for Senate or House, in conjunction with their party's campaign arm, spending money as a candidate. Essentially, they get to take advantage of those candidate rates that you mentioned. This was a practice that we saw a little bit more sparingly when you and I sort of started in this industry back in 2018, and we've really seen it accelerate and grow. And honestly, I've got to say, I think it might be. I'd love to see what fraction of the pie hybrid spending is making up this cycle, because I think it's going to be all-time highs.
For sure.
Yeah.
And what that allows is campaigns to get that lowest unit rate without being on the hook for as much money.
Exactly. And so they get to take advantage. Like all these campaign committees have just these large treasure chests that they love to flex in the news about how they raised this much in Q1 and this much in Q2. Now they get to spend that while not having to pay a premium on it.
Yeah.
And frankly, like it's happening.
It's there. And again,
there.
all of this, it contributes to that $8 billion we're going to see.
Right.
Because again, it's a chicken and the egg scenario. Because as more advertising goes in, the rates get higher, which means you have to pay more for the same ads, especially with all of these tentpole moments that we're starting to see between now and the election. So obviously last week we had the debates. You have football season in full swing now. You have the World Series coming up. These are opportunities for political campaigns who can afford it. And for political advertisers who can afford it. And so you're seeing those rates go higher and higher and higher which leads people to have to spend more money to match their opponents or pick up on what their allies are doing.
Not to mention, by the way, that we've talked a lot about candidates taking advantage of candidate rates, but a lot of these IEs that you might have read articles about spending this much in this market and this much in another market. Those are mostly reservations for this time period.
Absolutely.
That are already, they got to take advantage of rates at that point in time.
Yeah.
But now that they're on the air, the inventory is the inventory.
Absolutely.
It's going to get crunched.
And that's where it affects our, brand clients, right? Who
of course.
might be in some of these markets and find that the costs are even higher than they planned for.
Yeah.
And that there's even less inventory than they planned for, because a lot of the times those political advertisers will get the sort of first run because there's no make good after 11/5.
No.
It is there and it's done.
The day is done.
The day is done.
Yeah.
You can find us at any number of bars, after that happens.
We're going to try and set some records this year, folks. So just to recap, we're seeing a big confluence of events right now. Candidates taking advantage of those LUR windows, right? Hybrid campaigns really, really accelerating their operations.
Sure.
IEs that have placed these reservations finally seeing those come to roost, right? And all of that happening at the same time, where new groups are going to try and squeeze in as well, trying to take advantage of smaller inventory, higher rates, and frankly, for the busiest of markets, commercial advertisers are just going to be left out in the cold.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to prepare.
Yeah.
If you're, as a commercial advertiser, if you are only starting to prepare for disruptions now,
You miss the boat.
you miss the boat.
Yeah.
You are too late. And the only thing you can do is start getting ready for 2025 and 2026.
Well, on that really positive note,
It all starts over again. November 6th, first episode of APolitical for the next cycle.
who knows what we're going to be talking about then.
But no, thank you everyone for joining us again on APolitical. I'm Tyler Goldberg.
And I'm Alan Strokey.
We'll catch you next week, hopefully in different clothes.
Yeah, we'll see.